ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पदान् सहगण ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च वेदांत स्वामी निति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे वाञ्छा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So welcome everyone. Okay, welcome everyone today evening for what is our ninth session in this series of our study of Bhagavad Gita. So we have been discussing primarily topic of Swadharma, Kula Dharma, etc. We have been discussing since the last few weeks. There are several more things that we would discuss in that, but I thought, since variety is the mother of enjoyment, we would just change the theme, and then after some time I'll again go back to that. Right. So that is why we have taken this particular theme for today. The theme is the Ishwar as presented in Bhagavad Gita. So there are several verses of Bhagavad Gita, as you can see, which we will be trying to refer to today. I'm not sure if we could refer all of them, but at least several of them would come in our discussion for today, and a couple of verses from Bhagavatam as well. Okay, so let's get started. So these are the questions that we would one second. These are the questions that we are going to try to answer today. The first question is the role of Brahman understanding, the role of Brahman understanding of Ishwar in our lives. So we all know that the Gita as well as the Bhagavatam presents the supreme absolute truth in three phases: Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavan iti Shabdyate. So, and we also know that the Bhagavan is the highest feature in transcendence. And as devotees of Krishna, we aspire to develop relationship with the Bhagavan feature. But the question is the Brahman or the Paramatma feature in any way relevant to us as practicing devotees, or is it that we have nothing to do with them? So this is a question that we will try to answer first. The second one that we will try to answer is again related, is about why should we hear and analyze philosophy so much? Many times the feeling would be there that even on our Q&A group, we have a very active group, Q&A group, where we are constantly discussing and churning so many topics. So the question is it really necessary to analyze so much? Just do some seva and kind of live a simple life. So why to break our head on philosophy? So this is again a question. So we will be raising this question and trying to find answers to it. And finally, if time permits, we will also look at the differences between what is avatar and what is Bhagavan. So there are some very interesting differences we will be again looking at from Bhagavad Gita, Mahabharata, etc. on this particular topic. So these are the three questions that we are trying to raise and discuss today. So let's start with the first one right away, that is the role of Brahman feature of absolute truth in our lives. So this is the first question I said. what is the role of Brahman understanding of Ishwar or Lord in our lives. So this is one slide that I have already used before in one of our earlier discussions. I think this was our second or third topic. If you remember, it was in March we discussed this, where very briefly I had introduced the topic about how Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, all these features have their own great importance in our lives. So as far as the Brahman feature is concerned, we are just repeating this point. This is a repetition. It's kind of a recap of something that we had done already. That Brahman realization is seen in our disposition of the external world. So when we are interacting with the external world, the disposition of the external world should be in line with Brahman understanding of absolute truth. If not, there are challenges. So this is the first thing. As far as Paramatma is concerned, it is Paramatma is in our life, in our thoughtfulness and in our inner disposition. That means in our inner disposition, in our heart. So this is some topic that perhaps we will discuss some other time. We are not coming to Paramatma today. We are still in Brahman only. And Bhagavan, of course, is about loving service to the personal God. So one theme that we would be discussing today is that Bhagavan simply remains a Murti without us also having a Brahman level of disposition in our lives, in our interaction with people. Right? So this is one theme that we had discussed before, but I'm just recapping that theme. So if you remember, we had quoted from the section of Bhagavad Gita 2.54 to 2.72, where Krishna speaks about Sthita Prajna. He speaks about who is Sthita Prajna, about how one has to handle one's surroundings, how pleasure and pain are part of the journey of life, the importance of self-satisfaction in that particular mindset. So all this was briefly discussed long time back, but right. So we are not going to look at that again, but it was in reference to this particular section of Gita from 2.54 to 7. Okay, let's go ahead. Let's start with the first theme of the day, the role of Brahman understanding in our lives. Generally, as devotees, when we hear the word Brahman or Brahman understanding or somebody who is Brahman realized, we immediately have a fear about Mayavad, and we feel that, oh, this fellow is, he has not understood the Lord completely and so on. So we have some understandings about it. But if you see in the Bhagavad Gita, there are so many places in the Bhagavad Gita as well as in the Bhagavatam also, where a Brahman understanding is presented, right? It is very much there everywhere. Okay, so the first thing I want to say is that saying that I am God and you are God is wrong, certainly, which is what we condemn. But saying I am Brahman and you are Brahman is not condemned, because Brahman is not God. So Aham Brahmasmi, that I am part and parcel of Brahman, I am Brahman or whatever. So that is never a wrong understanding. So unfortunately, like if you see Srila Prabhupada, we see this that many times when several yogis, when they went to America, they would say, actually perhaps they wanted to say, I am Brahman, you are Brahman. But since they didn't have the equivalent word for Brahman in English, they ended up saying, I am God, you are God. And Prabhupada was obviously very heavy with all of them, because saying I am Brahman and saying I am God are not the same, because, right, so it doesn't translate like that. In fact, there is no equivalent word only for Brahman in the English and Christian languages, and God conveys something totally different. So this was the problem with the yogis in America, that they tried to convey this simple Sanskrit word in the English language and they would land in trouble. Okay. So the first thing is, Krishna harmonizes between Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan in Bhagavad Gita. And today we will be seeing several references from the scripture where Krishna is actually glorifying or speaking about a Brahman understanding. Right? And even if you see our philosophy, we say that Mahaprabhu gave us Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva, right? So in Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva, Bheda means the difference and Abheda means the similarity. Okay, so if you see Mahaprabhu's philosophy, Achintya Bheda, the inconceivable oneness and difference, that oneness is also there. But somehow it may happen many times that we don't speak so much about that oneness because we are fearful that we will become Mayavadi. In fact, we glorify or we focus on the Bheda a lot, but we don't focus on Abheda. And there are some very interesting challenges that actually happen when we don't focus on the Abheda. We will be discussing that also today. So first of all, I would like to start with the several places in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna is actually speaking about the Brahman understanding. Not only Bhagavad Gita, but even the Bhagavatam. So, okay, maybe I'll just start with the Bhagavatam. So if you see the Bhagavatam, I've given the verse number 7755. If you see this verse is basically the last verse spoken by Prahlad Maharaj to his friends. The last verse in the 7th chapter, where he's saying, Etavan eva lokesmin pumsa swartha parasprataha ekanta bhaktir govinde yet sarvatra tadikshanam. Okay, so he says that in the material world, to render service to the lotus feet of Govinda and to see him everywhere is the only goal of life. You know, yet sarvatra tadikshanam. Yet sarvatra tadikshanam means to see Krishna everywhere. And this whole concept of seeing Krishna everywhere, please remember, it comes originally from the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita when Krishna is saying, Yomam pashyati sarvatra sarvam chamai pashyati. One who sees me in everything and everything in me. To him I am not lost and he is not lost for me. And in fact, the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita is considered an explanation of this verse, where Krishna is saying how to see him in everything. So if you see this particular verse itself, 6.30, it's a very interesting verse because there are two parts to it. Seeing everything in Krishna and to see Krishna in everything. Right? Now, if you see, seeing everything in Krishna is considered slightly easier, comparatively easier. Just like we come to the temple and we see Krishna. So in Krishna, we can connect everything. Right? So even if you see Purusha Sukta, okay, Krishna's the head is compared to the Brahmanas and this, and I mean the whole social structure, everything you can see in Krishna, at least by understanding. But to see Krishna in everything is relatively more difficult because you have to actually work harder there, right? So that means you have to see Krishna in your job, you have to see Krishna in the environment, you have to see Krishna in so many things which are actually very difficult for many people to see. But that is again the expectation of Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. And this actually comes from a Brahman understanding, if you carefully observe. Because this verse 6.30 comes in the section 6.25 to 6.30 in Bhagavad Gita, which primarily is talking about a Brahman understanding, which we will be seeing also soon. But the point is, this is not that. So these two are a little different, seeing everything in Krishna and seeing Krishna and everything. Now, again, if you see in the 12th canto Bhagavatam, I've written that verse there, 12.5.11 and 12. This turns out to be the last instruction that Shukadeva Goswami gives to Maharaj Parikshit before departing. He says, Aham Brahma Param Dhamma Brahmaham Paramam Padam Evam Samiksha Chatmanam Atman Adhaya Nishkale. Where Shukadeva Goswami is telling Parikshit Maharaj, you should consider I am non-different from the absolute truth, the supreme abode. And that absolute truth, the supreme destination is non-different from me. Thus, resigning yourself to the supreme soul who is free from all material misidentifications, you will not even notice the snake bird Takshak when he approaches with his poison-filled fangs and bites your foot. Nor will you see your dying body or the material world around you because you will have realized yourself to be separate from them. Okay, so this is the last thing that he speaks actually. Basically, he doesn't even wait for Parikshit Maharaj's death. He just speaks this verse that be situated in the self and he walks out. Right. Similarly, if you see in Bhagavad Gita, now we will start with the Bhagavad Gita. There are so many places in Bhagavad Gita where the Brahman kind of understanding is there. So the second chapter, obviously, we have discussed that 2.54 to 2.72. This we have already discussed once earlier. And if you remember, the last verse in that particular series, Yesha Brahmi Sthiti Partha Nainam Prapya Vimukhyati. So that whole section is there. Then if you go to the fifth chapter, that 5.18 to 5.25, Krishna is actually very clearly speaking about a Brahmasthita person. Vidya Vinay Sampanne Brahmane Gavi Hastini Suni Cheva Swapa Kecha Pandita Samadarshina. So the Samadarshi is again achieved by someone who is in the Abheda, right? Abheda means not seeing difference. So that is what Krishna is speaking of here, where he's saying that somebody who has Vidya and Vinaya, he sees a Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a Brahman, a dog eater, Chandala, everybody as the same. So he has that kind of Abheda vision. Then Krishna says in 5.19, Ihevatair jitas sargo yesham samye sthitam manaha. The translation is those whose minds are established in sameness and equanimity have already conquered the conditions of birth and death. They are flawless like Brahman and they are already situated in Brahman. Look at that verse. Nirdosham hi samam Brahma tasmat Brahmani te sthitah. So this is 5.19 Bhagavad Gita, where he's saying the effect of somebody who achieves Abheda. That means if you can be established in sameness and equanimity. Equanimity means not too disturbed by pleasure, pain, happiness, distress, etc. And if you can see everybody equally, if you can do only this much, Krishna says you have already conquered birth and death. And Krishna says such a person is just like Brahman and is situated in Brahman. Then if you see 5.20 again, Na praharshet priyam prapya nudvijet prapya chapriyam sthita buddha. Okay.
Prabhuji, screen.
We were at this particular point about how in the fifth chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is speaking so many verses about a Brahman realized soul. Correct? That entire section which I have written there, 5.18 to 5.25, if you read, these are all about someone who is at that platform. If you see 5.21, Bahya Sparsha Swasaktatma Vindya Atmani Yatsukam Sab Brahma Yoga Yuktatma. You see that verse also. The self-realized person enjoys unlimited happiness, for he focuses. So if you see that whole section, and then again, if you see so many other sections in Bhagavad Gita, if you open 6th chapter also, where 6th chapter from 6.7 to 6.9, where Krishna is speaking in 6.8 about how the self-realized person sees everything, pebble, stone, gold as the same. Again, that is Abheda Tattva. Looking at things, that means not looking at a difference between pebble, stone and gold. Then in text 9, Krishna is going one step higher. Krishna is saying that a person is considered still advanced when he regards honest well-wishers, affectionate benefactors, neutral, meditate, mediators, envious friends, bandhusu, sadhu shapisha papeshu sama buddhir vishishyate. If you look at that verse also, 6.9 Bhagavad Gita that I just read, and then again if you go to 6.25 Bhagavad Gita to 6.30, right? If you see all those set of verses, prashanta manasam hyenam yoginam sukham uttamam upaiti shanta rajasam brahma bhutam akalmasham. The yogi whose mind is fixed on me attains the highest perfection. He is beyond the mode of passion, realizes his qualitative identity with the Supreme, and thus he is freed from all reactions to past deeds. And then finally, this section ends with that 6.30 verse, Yomam Pashyati Sarvatra Sarvam Chamai Pashyati, which I had already read earlier on. Then similarly, again, if you go to the 7th chapter, again, there are so many places where Krishna is talking about this particular thing about Abheda, right? About seeing that non-difference. So, for example, Krishna speaks in 7.8, Rasoham Apsu Kaunte, you know, all those series of verses, to seek him as the taste of water, the light of the sun, moon, and so on. All that is again in the same theme. So what I'm just trying to say is, there are so many verses in the Bhagavad Gita and in the Srimad Bhagavatam that emphasize on Abheda. That means on seeing that non-difference. Correct? Hare Krishna. Yeah? Yes, so there are so many such verses in the scriptures. So the question is, why is this emphasized so much? Or the question is also, how could actually one be at this particular level, right? So this is also very important. So the general understanding is that the Brahman platform is attained through Chintan Manan and the way we deal in our day-to-day life. So basically there is Chintan. Chintan means in contemplation by Mananam, and how you deal in your day-to-day life with anything that comes up. So just to give some practical example, many times there are small difficulties that we face in life, or sometimes big difficulties that we face in life. So unfortunately, it happens that when somebody faces a big difficulty, we tend to feel, why is Krishna doing this to me? So generally, somebody who actually strives to be on the Brahman platform does not ask this question, why Krishna is doing this to me? You cannot ask that question, because the idea is that everything in the material world is acting according to Prakriti. So there is no point in blaming Krishna for something that happens in our life. Are you getting it? So otherwise we become like the Islamic people who say that Corona has been given by Allah because he's angry with us. I'm sure all of us have heard this, in the news and everything, where some people speak like this, and they're actually speaking their philosophy. So some people feel that it is a fanatic Muslims who are saying like that. But the answer is no, it is not like that. It is not fanatic Muslims. Those who are actually knowledgeable in Islam, they are only saying this because that is what their religion is saying, that God becomes angry and he inflicts suffering. But in the Vedanta and the Bhagavad Gita paradigm, it is not like that. Bhinna Prakriti, the Prakriti is separated, right? Like Prabhupada gives the example that the elephant has passed stool and it has walked away. Now the stool of the elephant is the separated energy of the elephant. It may remind you of the elephant, but the elephant is again not there in that stool. Of course, this is a mundane example. So the elephant has no control on that left stool also. Krishna, if he wishes to, he could. But the point is, generally, he does not. He leaves Prakriti to work the way it is. So, when we have this type of understanding, which is the Brahman understanding of how Prakriti functions, then we are able to relate with the external world with more maturity, right? We are able to face situations of happiness, distress, everything with more composure. And also we are able to deal with people also like that. So just like if you notice on this slide, I have made this point. When we do not practice this principle of Brahman understanding, then what happens? So if you note, I have raised that question. Why should we practice Abheda Tattva? So basically, if you do not, then what happens is we unnecessarily keep developing various enmity and conflicts with people and devotees around. Right. So I remember that when our temple was formed and, once His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj had told our devotees also, at least some of our leaders, that when a community of devotees are there staying together, you have to be very careful in the way you interact with each other, he said. Otherwise, he said, like there are many communities in the ISKCON world where he was giving some example of somewhere in Italy, where in some place there are many families, it seems, but all of them, it seems, developed some kind of conflict with each other and nobody talks to each other. So basically a community of devotees where everybody has some misunderstandings. And Maharaj was cautioning us against it, that be careful when devotees come together, because the problem is that unless we are actually situated, we can actually see people non-different from us, like you can see your neighbor and everybody around you as the way you see yourself, right? The way Chanakya says, Atmavat Sarva Bhuteshu, that Atmavat Sarva Bhuteshu, unless we can see like that, we see that difference too much, and we see the difference too much, then we develop conflict. So to give some more practical examples, so it is sometimes seen that within spiritual societies there is a lot of conflict because of too much bheda, right? And people, so if you see religious conflicts in general world over, if you see in the church, if you see in so many other places, even in our society, if you see, I'll give examples of all of that. So we see sometimes that people, develop too much conflict with each other. So there was one very famous Italian author, Croce, his name was. He said, the Italian men became more and more irreligious and simultaneously more and more loyal to the church. So he was saying that they became closer to the church, but they became more and more irreligious. That means they started doing acts that weren't in line with dharma. So basically, so sometimes this does happen, where because of seeing the difference too much. So for example, just like seeing examples like where we too much emphasize on my guru, your guru, my disciple, your disciple, and my temple, your temple. So many times even conflicts among devotees come because of that. So I remember several times Radheshyam Prabhu would tell us, or there would be meetings where this would happen, that one devotee is trying to go and preach in some place, and he has started a preaching also in a college, but then some local fellow is there, he's not preaching there in that college, he doesn't even have the capacity to preach, but he doesn't like that this person is coming from another place and preaching, so he complains to his authorities and says that no, this fellow cannot come here. I mean, if you look at these kind of incidents, what you understand is that there is a very basic lack of this understanding of Abheda. That means you are seeing such a gross difference. I mean, here Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is talking about seeing a sinner, seeing an elephant, seeing a dog eater, everybody at the same platform. And we are finding it difficult to see even a devotee who is coming to preach at the same platform. We are finding that very difficult. People complain, and finally in a management meeting, all these things are discussed. So this happens very frequently actually in religious organizations, somewhere where there is this too much the focus on Veda. Veda means difference, but Abheda, that uniformity is not seen. So unfortunately, so this happens. So even in our congregation, sometimes we all know, like all of us who are staying in Pune, we know that many of us or many people have conflict with many other devotees living in the same area, where you don't speak to each other, or you're kind of little katti, what they say. So we find it so difficult to be abheda, that means to see the non-difference with even fellow devotees. What to speak of seeing the non-difference with some other entity like dog and elephant and all that Krishna is speaking in Bhagavad Gita. That is actually far-fetched. We are finding even this much very difficult to see. Correct. So generally we see that people are threatened by very small things. Busy fighting over very useless things, that he said this to me, I became hurt because of that. And sometimes, many times what happens is that the pain is contemplated in one's mind more than the actual pain. So sometimes the actual pain was not so much, but because we contemplated too much that this person gave me pain, then one feels too much pained, and then one imagines too much injustice. So all this happens very often, even in community of spiritual practitioners. And one of the reasons is that we are unable to implement even this basic feature of Bhagavad Gita. Now, please note, this feature of Bhagavad Gita about Brahman understanding is there very much. So we can't ignore this. As I read so many verses, this is there in the Gita. And many times there are many great saints who are perhaps not even devotees of Krishna, but they attained this state. So just like in Maharashtra, we see that, two saints are very famous in Maharashtra. Tukaram Maharaj is, of course, more famous as a Vaishnava devotee. But then there is another person who is very famous in Maharashtra, at least in the local understanding, that is Sant Jnaneshwar. Now, if you see Jnaneshwar, as the word suggests, he was a Brahman realized kind of person. At least that is what the biographers and everybody say about him. And generally, when we hear like this about somebody who was Brahman realized, we look at them very inferior. We think that, oh, they are at some low level of understanding. But what we fail to realize is that they have actually, this aspect, what Krishna is saying in Bhagavad Gita, they have actually reached there. And that is why they are also very great, because they have got something which perhaps even as devotees, we are finding it, practicing devotees are finding it difficult to reach to or whatever. And that is why we see that a true Vaishnava respects even such people for what they have achieved. Like sometimes you will see in Tukaram Maharaj's Abhangas, he offers respects to Jnaneshwar, because Jnaneshwar was senior to him in terms of, he appeared in the 12th century and Tukaram appeared in the 16th century. So Tukaram offers obeisances to him, because the understanding is that, okay, I may be practicing Vaishnava, but this person, at least he achieved some very elevated stage of understanding, which most of us are actually struggling to obtain, right? So I'll just give one or two more examples. You will understand what we are talking about. Another example that I want to take about this in the context of what happens when we do not practice this principle of Brahman understanding. So this once someone was telling me about in Chowpatty, so you may know this conflict in general in the ISKCON, with ISKCON and Gaudiya Math, so sometimes there have been conflicting situations. So one of the Gaudiya Math leaders, his name was Narayan Maharaj, and he's of course passed away today. But a few years back, he was in Bombay in some particular place. So it seems that His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj had gone to meet him along with some brahmacharis from Chowpatty temple. So when they went to meet him, it seems Narayan Maharaj said that, his main complaint was that why do you or ISKCON not allow us to come to your temples and all that. So there was some management complaint. Anyway, as all that was happening, there were many of that Narayan Maharaj's disciples who were very young actually, very new people. But when they saw our Chowpatty brahmacharis, they were like telling them, oh, we are so happy that you finally came to our temple also. You have understood the greatness of our Guru Maharaj and you have come here. And, they started in this way talking like this to these brahmacharis. So these fellows, when they came out, our brahmacharis, they felt that, why such a conflict? Why such a strong feeling? My temple, your temple, you have come to our temple. I mean, so one brahmachari was telling that, is it like a mosque or something that, this mosque, that mosque, and the fellow of this church doesn't go to that church and so on. So unfortunately, sometimes spiritual practitioners, they get too much into the Bheda part and we forget to see that oneness with even fellow Vaishnavas we struggle to see. And in management, this is always an issue. This is always an issue in management. So actually, I'm giving these examples just so that we understand this concept better. Because otherwise, without an example, we really sometimes don't understand. So, so all these conflicts that happen in terms of zones, in terms of trying to say who can preach where, this, that, many times it's at an extremely external bodily platform, just like how children fight outside, when they're playing games, that this area I will play and this area you will play. You will not come in my area, I will not come in your area. So that kind of distinction is made sometimes. So these are some of the challenges which happen when we fail to understand, when we fail to realize the importance of Brahman understanding in our life. And how to achieve the Brahman understanding? Well, it is achieved, as I said, by a lot of meditation, discussion, and also even this whole concept of Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga. If you see, what is Karma Yoga ultimately? Karma Yoga means seeing Krishna in our duties in life, right? So in our Varna and Ashram, Varna means our occupation as well as our family, to see Krishna in that. And Jnana Yoga means to see Krishna in our understanding, to see Krishna in environment. All this is part of actually the Brahman understanding. All this is part. and also the knowledge discussion in general. This is all part of that. And unless that actually happens, one finds it very difficult to stay at this level. So please note, we are talking about Brahman platform. We are not talking about the Mayavad stuff. So I'm not touching that. So Mayavad basically means that those Brahmavadis who think that Krishna's form is Maya, then that becomes an offense to Krishna and so on. But we are not talking about that. So that part is clearly a problem. But this basic Brahman understanding is certainly considered a important part of Sanatana Dharma. So I'll just go ahead now to the next question. Yeah, so now since we spoke about hearing and analyzing philosophy so much, let us come to this particular question. Why should one really bother to hear and understand or analyze Bhagavad Gita philosophy by dissecting it so much? Why not keep it very simple? So this is one question that could come. So we will address this question. It's in relation to what we just spoke. Right. So the first thing is that as I have written here, there is Vyavahar and there is analysis. So basically in Vyavahar means in behavior, there is Dvandva. Dvandva means duality. Right. So just like, for example, we see that Bhishma was killed. Right. So Krishna had to punish Bhishma by killing him. Through Arjuna, of course. So that is considered, a duality, as in, you show an enmity towards somebody by killing that person. Or Krishna killed Vali, right? Or, Ram killed Vali, Ram killed Ravan. So you see this often, that there is the situation where somebody is punished publicly. So that is actually exhibiting a duality, right? Because you are showing that he's different from you and hence you're punishing him. So that part is there, but the Shastra generally says in your analysis, you should be very clear. So that means there is Dvandva and Vyavahar, but not in analysis. Analysis means when we analyze that particular person in theory, then we understand that no, there is perfection in it. So for example, if you see Bhishma Pitama, right? Bhishma Pitama, if you see, okay, from the perspective of Vyavahar, external world, he was punished. But in terms of understanding, it was all reconciled. It was understood who Bhishma is. Krishna again got the Pandavas to Bhishma so that they could hear him. Bhishma's glories were established. He was sent back to Godhead. So basically, from an understanding perspective, from an analysis perspective, it was all sorted out. Even if you see when Lord Ram killed Vali, he punished him. The Dvandva was exhibited externally in Vyavahar, but in analysis again with Vali, he sorted it out. If you see that after killing Vali, Ram addresses Vali very nicely, why he was killed, and an understanding was given. Vali also understands, and finally he moves out of the world happy, and he hands over his son. He begs forgiveness from Sugriva and all that. So basically what I'm saying is, analysis is considered very important, because in analysis, we should not have too much duality. So that is the reason why we hear and analyze philosophy so much, so that we can be very clear about that. And this is very much spoken in the Bhagavad Gita. So if you see Bhagavad Gita, I'm just quoting text 4.36. If you see 4.36 Bhagavad Gita, one second. Yeah, Krishna says, Apichedasi papebhya sarvebhya papakrittama sarvam jnana plaveneva vrijinim santarishyasi. Even if you are considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, when you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross over the ocean of miseries. So Krishna is saying that no matter who you are, even if you are just situated on the boat of knowledge, that means if you just even understand things properly, Krishna is saying, you can cross over ocean of misery. So much importance is given just to understanding. If you can understand something well, that itself is glorified as part of Bhagavad Gita chapter 4. Because if that understanding comes in your mind, in your brain, then automatically in some way in action also it comes out. So this is considered very important. So that is why we see like Indra also, that is why we see when somebody does a mistake, too much, at least in the analysis, we should be very clear. And that person, he may get some kind of punishment for what he did, but at the same time, his opportunity to do services never stopped. So Govind Prabhu, when he was talking about this point, he was very nicely saying that how in Chopati, they have a rule only, he said, that whenever any devotee does any mistake, they may give them some punishment, but they do it in such a way that publicly they will never humiliate that person. And he also said that, at one point, they will always allow that person to come back. He was giving many examples to us. So one or two examples, I'll just quote what he gave. Very nice examples of how to deal with devotees who do mistakes. So he was saying that there was one devotee who was, who was married with another devotee. Both were initiated. But this devotee, this man, he was homosexual. So it seems he would trouble his wife a lot. And for many years, his wife didn't realize only what his husband's problem, her husband's problem was. After a long time, she realized that this person is actually having relationships with other men. And when this became revealed after several years of marriage, then the temple obviously decided that they have to punish him in some way for hiding the fact from his wife. But at the same time, because he was a devotee, they called him and they told him that, see, you can't come to temple at least for some years till your wife, who has now got divorced from you, she has to get remarried again properly. Until then, you don't come to devotees. But again, because you are a devotee, you can meet 4 or 5 devotees and they will give you inspiration and katha and everything. And after 5 years, it seems by that time that wife was also married. So they allowed this person also to come to the temple. They told that wife also, see, now you are married to another man. So forgive this old husband of yours. I mean, this previous ex-husband. He did mistakes, whatever. And they said that we never sent any letter out or anything. So he was telling that in their 30 years, whenever anybody did a mistake in Chowpatty temple or connected congregation, it may be financial, it may be anything. Because the point is this, that the dvandva is in vyavahar. That means in behavior, we may punish them in some way by stopping them for some time. But in the ultimate analysis of reality, we have to understand that every mistake is circumstantial, and constitutionally everybody has full flexibility, full facility to come up, right? So permanently banning somebody or publicly slapping someone is considered terrible actually. So I heard also from many of my close friends that when several issues happened in our temple also related to some brahmacharis who left ashram and everything, I'm not naming that here. That time it seems our Maharaj, Radhanath Maharaj, was also kind of very pained, and he would constantly keep asking updates, it seems, from our leaders, how that person is feeling, where is he, and so on. Because this is a very important part of the understanding of Bhagavad Gita, where in the ultimate analysis you're supposed to sort it out, and you're supposed to give a position back to everyone. That means you're supposed to restore everybody back. That is why see in Shastra that Indra may do so many big mistakes he does, but ultimately he may be given some punishment for that mistake, but then he's reinstated, right? He is not completely kicked out. No, because he has that position. So, and he has that ability also. So sometimes we see that we throw people out easily, but then we will not get such a person later, right? So that is why this analysis is also important, because the analysis ultimately helps us with this understanding of how to look at people also, right? So this is one important reason why one should analyze so much things, because if we don't analyze, then we may in a hurry kind of do something which will permanently damage a relationship or a person. But more importantly, the reason why one should analyze and hear philosophy so much is because what happens when one grows old or when one cannot keep performing. So please remember that as long as we have energy to contribute, we keep doing many things, right? But ultimately what will happen is, for example, person may become old and person may not be able to contribute in many ways. Are you getting my point? Like, for example, now I am in the finance committee of the temple in Pune. Now, why I am in the finance committee of the temple? I am in the finance committee because I may be getting some donations or I may be giving money myself for whatever. But in a few years, it may happen that I may not be able to give money or I may not be able to collect donations. So I may obviously not be in the financial committee. So the point is that the external seva which is there is related to our position. And in an organization, obviously, when you are no longer able to contribute at that level, then you will get sidelined. And it seems that it happens with many devotees who are elderly in age, when they automatically get sidelined. So please note, sidelining is not the problem of the organization. An organization obviously wants only efficient young people who can contribute a lot. Just like we see in politics also. The BJP sidelined Advani, right? Because he's very old now. He's 92-year-old or whatever. He can't contribute. So sideline kar diya. So the point is, similarly, even in spiritual organizations, you will get sidelined when you cannot contribute externally. But the point is, at that time, it is this knowledge and this analysis that can save a person, because this is always there with you. So for example, one may not be able to go to the temple, one may be alone, one may be old, is sitting at home. And at that time, if our only strength in life came from, kind of external glorification and external target achievement, and if we did not know how to dwell deep into knowledge, then it is considered a kind of a dangerous situation. So basically, you will see some very interesting quotes that I have put up here. Truth will not make you rich, but will make us free. Facts without perspective cannot save us from despair. Science can give us knowledge, but philosophy gives us wisdom. If you see many of these quotes, they are basically talking about the importance of a philosophical approach to life. And if you see Krishna also in Bhagavad Gita, he says very clearly that in 18.70, he says that those who study Gita are worshipping me with his intelligence. Right? Another important point about this theme that we are discussing, why one should analyze so much, is from Bhagavad Gita 10.8. If you see 10.8, where Krishna says, Buddha Bhava Samanvitaha. He says the wise who know perfectly, means philosopher. He says that so that means Bhava or emotion comes from Buddha. That means from understanding. That means if you don't have the understanding, then you don't have the Bhava as well. Right? So the Bhava comes from understanding. Otherwise, that Bhava also is kind of considered sentimentalism. So that is why there is a lot of importance to knowledge and philosophical approach in general, right? And this is the reason why we are analyzing these things so much. The last theme which we are discussing today is about the differences between Avatar and Bhagavan. So this is again a very interesting thing. So, I'm discussing this in the context of, because our theme today was Ishwar of the Bhagavad Gita. So Ishwar of the Bhagavad Gita is Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. So about Brahman we did speak. Paramatma I did not speak much today. We will touch it some other time in more detail. But if you see about Bhagavan, so one verse that comes up in the Bhagavad Gita is the 7.24, where Krishna says, Avyaktam Vyaktimam Pannam Manyante Mam Abuddhayah. Right? We have all heard this verse where Krishna is saying that those who are unintelligent, they think that I was impersonal before, and now I have become person. So he talks about that. The unintelligent do not know who I am. So basically, when the Supreme Brahman appears in human form, he basically causes bewilderment to most people. Right? So why he causes bewilderment, if you see, it is because people don't understand the difference between Avatar and Bhagavan. So Bhagavan means one who has no restriction. So Bhagavan can do anything basically. That's actually Bhagavan. But if you see Avatar, that means when the Lord comes to this world, his nature is that he behaves like a human being only. And he acts under limitations. Right? So basically he acts under limitations. Hence what we observe is that an Avatar who is there always exhibits limitations. So whether it is Lord Ram or Lord Krishna, they exhibited limitations, right? So just like we see that Ram was forced to send Mother Sita to the forest. Why was he forced to send Sita to the forest? Because he was forced to do by the surrounding, right? He did not show the Ishwar Bhav over there. He basically showed the Raja Ka Bhav. The Raja Ka Bhav is that, as a king, he had to ensure that the Praja is very happy with whatever he's doing, and that Praja shouldn't be unhappy. Even Krishna, if you see, on so many occasions, he behaved just like a human being. So just like we see that when Draupadi is asking Krishna that why didn't you come to save me? Krishna says that I was fighting with Shalva some other place. I mean, during the gambling match. So Krishna says that I was fighting with Shalva in another place and hence I could not come to save you. Of course, he gave sari indirectly, but directly he did not come. So the point is, Krishna does not behave like Bhagavan always as an avatar. Similarly, if you see that Krishna did not protect Abhimanyu from dying, right? Abhimanyu died. And Krishna was also just like any other human being with the family of the Pandavas lamenting that death, saying that we couldn't do anything because we were in another place. We couldn't do anything. Right. So this is very common actually, that avatar always exhibits limitations. And an avatar by nature is generally his Manusha only in this world. That means generally he acts like a human being. And sometimes he becomes Bhagavan. That means he assumes that he shows that power, right? So just like we see in the Mahabharata also, there were 4 or 5 occasions, like Krishna caused the sun to set when Jayadratha had to be killed, or Krishna protected Parikshit in the womb. There were some occasions where Krishna showed his power as Bhagavan. But otherwise, generally, an avatar, when he's walking in the world, he behaves like a human being. And because of these 2 things happen, those who are not devotees of Krishna or Lord Ram, when they look at this, they feel, aisa kaise Bhagavan hai? Bhagavan ne kaise Sita ko bhej diya forest mein? Because they are thinking that the avatar should always be acting like a Bhagavan or doing something. Or somebody may feel, why didn't Krishna save Abhimanyu? So basically, they think that he should behave always miraculously at every second. But the point is, avatar never does that. He behaves like a human being only most of the time. Rarely he shows that Bhagavan feature. It is there. If he wishes, he can do. As far as the devotees are concerned, they love to see Krishna like this. Because these limitations of God as an avatar, which he does, becomes the beauty in his pastime. And when the devotee sees such pastimes, he is very much attracted to Krishna. He is very happy that Krishna is doing such wonderful pastimes like a ordinary human being. Another thing to understand why Krishna does this, that when he comes as an avatar, why he doesn't behave like a Bhagavan always, is so that the pastime can become very interesting. So just like I've written here, if somebody scores 100 in every cricket match, suppose some cricketer is there, in every match he scores a century, then he becomes a very boring player. In fact, nobody wants to see such a match. I mean, anybody will feel that why have this fellow in our team? Because anytime he comes, he's surely going to hit 100 runs. तो मजा ही नहीं आता उसके साथ खेलने में. So even if you see the greatest Don Bradman, on several occasions he got out on a 0. So basically only then. So similarly, Krishna also, when he comes as an avatar, on several occasions he also behaves just like a normal human being. He will cry with the Pandavas on the death of someone, and he will behave just like normal. And these limitations of God, which he takes on himself when he comes as an avatar, increases the beauty of his pastimes, and the devotees are very happy. But those who are not devotees, when they look at this, they get confused and they come up with many wrong understandings. And one of them is this, Avyaktam Vyaktimapannam, that he is a non-manifest entity before. That means he didn't have any existence and he has come. And here in this particular verse, we see that all the Vaishnavacharyas are generally very heavy with Mayavadis who come up with several wrong interpretations of Krishna. Right, several wrong interpretations of Krishna. So this part is showing the limitations of God. And the last thing that I want to speak today is about the beauty of the psychology of Bhagavan, which comes in 7.18. So in this particular verse, if you see 7.18, Krishna says, Udara sarva evete jnanetvat memamevatam astita se yuktatma mave manuttamam gatim. Where Krishna says that all these devotees are magnanimous. Who are magnanimous? Those 4 types. Artho, Jignasu, Artharthi and Jnani. Krishna is talking about them. He's saying that all of them are magnanimous. Now if you ask the question, why is Krishna calling these 4 people as magnanimous? Somebody who comes to God in times of crisis, why are they being called as magnanimous? So there is a very beautiful commentary of Vedanta Desika where he says that because Krishna also believes in the concept of duty, in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has said, right, if I don't do my duty, the whole world will be in ruination. And what is Krishna's duty? His duty is to do palan, poshan, rakshan. That means his duty is to provide, to protect, and so on. So when can he provide and protect? Only if somebody approaches Krishna, then Krishna can provide and protect. If nobody approaches Krishna for something, then Krishna cannot provide and protect. So when the living entity approaches Krishna, Krishna feels that, oh, you're making my life fruitful so that I can follow my duty. And that is the reason Krishna is calling them as magnanimous. It's a very interesting commentary because it talks about the psychology of God, about what he feels about those who come to him for various things. So similarly, we see like Rupa Goswami writes in Nectar of Devotion that Krishna felt Draupadi has put me in eternal obligation by calling out my name. So he actually feels like that. So even if you see Rukmini, when that Brahmin who came with that message that Krishna is coming to marry you very soon, that Rukmini said one of the very beautiful statements. She says that I have nothing to offer, I just offer my obeisances. She basically just folds her hands and offers pranam. So because the idea is that when you offer your obeisances, you are eternally obliged to that other person. And that is why Krishna also says that whenever anybody calls my name and offers obeisances, I become eternally obliged to that person. So these are some of the psychology of God, where how he actually, deals very intimately with his particular people, right? Another thing that we see about Krishna as an avatar is, I forgot to say that he behaves very normal. For example, if you see Krishna, when, Arjun, when he defeats Jayadratha, when he kills Jayadratha, and when he comes back, on the way back, it is said, Krishna is glorifying Arjuna so beautifully. Krishna is telling Arjuna, hey Arjun, so nicely you shot arrows today. And so nicely you were shooting arrows. On many occasions it happens that Krishna is very happy to see the way Arjuna is shooting arrows. So somebody may say, "Arey, isme kaun si badi baat hai? These are all material things only, na, shooting arrow. What is so great about shooting arrow? It's just some material quality, right?" So there are so many people who are shooting arrows. But Krishna finds a great pleasure in glorifying even such normal material acts which his devotees do with great excellence. So these are some natures of this avatar when he comes to this world. He behaves very normally, like every human being. Like as human beings, we also glorify each other's material abilities, right? Somebody is able to do something wonderful in sports, then a person glorifies that person. Similarly, Krishna also behaves like that only. And when people see that, they find it very difficult to understand and relate to. Okay, so I'll just summarize what we spoke. There were just 3 points that we spoke today. The first point was the Brahman disposition. So if you remember, I read from several verses in the Bhagavad Gita as well as the Bhagavatam about how a Brahman understanding is important, because this understanding of Abheda, Achintya Beda Abheda, the Abheda is also very important. We have to see oneness with others. And I was giving examples that how in spiritual societies or communities also, when we don't see that Abheda Tattva, we unnecessarily develop quarrel and misunderstandings over small issues with devotees. And even in our management, we become very, very, small-minded, where we don't allow somebody to preach in some area, that we fight over resources and people, seeing a lot of distinction. And we are talking about a spiritual society. And Krishna is talking about Abheda, even in the context of a dog and dog eater. That is actually far-fetched, but we actually struggle even at a very low level of understanding. So this is one important theme that I said. And the solution to obtain Abheda, the solution to achieve Brahman understanding, I said, was Chintan, Manan, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga. This is the standard understanding. Because that is why we see that a lot of Brahman understanding in Bhagavad Gita comes in the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is actually talking about Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, etc. Because it is through that one gets that understanding, and it is actually important. It is primary. So even if we are a devotee of Krishna, the Murti, that Bhagavan aspect is what we are aspiring for. But even then, we should try to come to this Brahman disposition so that we have a good interaction with the world. So that is the first thing. And in connection with that, I said, hence we should never be lazy to go deep into philosophy. Because I said one thing is that only when we go very deep into that analysis, we can actually help clear any duality in analysis. I was saying that how in action there may be, action actually comes later. If you see Bhagavad Gita, it is very clear. First is understanding and then there is action, right? When you have the right understanding, your action is great, right? So sometimes somebody's action may be very great, but they may just not have the understanding. Like we see even in recent times, so many of our Indian Jawans, they gave up their life in Kashmir fighting for, the country. They did the action of giving up their life, but if only that understanding was also there of the Gita, of Karma Yoga, of Jnana Yoga, etc., it would actually be simply amazing. So the understanding is considered primary and action is considered secondary. As in, it's considered the follow-up. That's how it is considered. So one should never be lazy to go into philosophy. And also because in old age and later in life, we may be unable to do things externally, but at least we would be able to relish the understanding. And how Krishna speaks in Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, in several places, that just by having the right understanding, one actually gets liberation. And then we finally concluded speaking briefly from 7.24 Bhagavad Gita about the difference between Bhagavan and Avatar, saying how Avatar exhibits human limitations in the world, whereas Bhagavan does not, right? So in the spiritual world, Lord does not exhibit any limitation, but in the material world, when Krishna comes, there are some limitations, and he behaves just like human being, which many normal people don't understand, and they get confused about him, that how can God do like this? Because they expect that Avatar should always be like Bhagavan, doing miraculous things. But he doesn't do that. He by and large remains, doing things the way human beings do. Okay, so thank you very much for whatever time we had. Yeah, questions? So I see some hands up. Is that Prem Bhaktiras Mataji or is it Shamlila Prabhu? I'm not sure with the hand up. Haribol bro, can you speak a little loudly?
Yeah. Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah, please.
Actually, a couple of questions I had. One is that this you said that Avatar, generally Avatar has certain limitations. But at the same time, you also said that Bhagwan, as a Bhagwan, he acts very rarely in Avatar.
Yeah.
So, Pandavas, he helps in that Rajasuya Yajna. There are so many stories that Govind Prabhu was telling that it was Krishna is reaching everywhere, wherever there is a help required at the end, Krishna is always reaching there. So, is that how we should understand this Bhagwan psychology? Like Krishna says that he is magnanimous, means these people are magnanimous, or Krishna is saying that he is grateful to Draupadi. Is this symbolic, or this is bhavnatmak, or this is just assurance that Krishna is giving? How should one take this aspect of Bhagwan in one's life?
Which aspect of Bhagwan? Which aspect of Bhagwan? Can you just clarify?
Bhagwan's aspect means Bhagwan psychology. Like you were talking about Avatar psychology and Bhagwan psychology. So,
yeah.
So how a devotee has to take Bhagwan psychology means I'm just talking, with the examples that you have given, like Draupadi, he's saying that, you called my name, so I'm very grateful to you. Or Krishna is saying that the four Sukratis, that they are magnanimous. So is it like, something like what we say, Sarvadharman Parite, just an assurance? It is symbolic, it is bhavnatmak. How should a devotee take the Bhagwan's aspect of Bhagwan?
Yeah. See, basically, we didn't speak so much on Bhagwan psychology today. I was speaking on Avatar psychology only. So, Avatar psychology, I spoke two things. One is about how when the Lord comes as an avatar, he comes to do his duty, right? Like Krishna is saying in 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, even I have come to this world, I do my duty. Because if I don't do my duty, then nobody will. Now, what is his duty? his duty is to protect, right? Because he's avatar. He has come to protect. Paritranaya sadhuna. So unless somebody seeks his protection, whom will he protect? Correct. That is why in the context of Artho Jignasur Artharthi, we have examples like Gajendra, Draupadi, and the 4 Kumaras and all that. Because all these people, they were like Artho Jignasur Artharthi or Jnani, whatever. But they all come to Krishna, and when they come to Krishna, Krishna is able to do his duty in avatar as a Palan Poshak, that kind of a thing. He's able to do his thing, right? Because unless somebody will ask him, how will he do anything for them? So that is in that context, I spoke about 7.18, that Krishna is calling these people as magnanimous because he's allowing him to do his duty. Correct? See, just like you are able to do your duty because somebody is taking the service from you, right? Like you are a father because your daughter is accepting your fatherhood, right? So you are grateful to your daughter because if she is not there, how will you exhibit your fatherhood? So similarly, like that avatar Krishna is happy that he comes to this world to do his duties, and there people are there who call, his devotees are there who call out to him, because of which he is able to do. So that was one aspect I said. And the other aspect of avatar psychology I said is that he behaves like a human being only most of the time. 99% of the time, Krishna was also behaving like human being only, right? Rarely, of course, Krishna did many miracles if you see. At least outside Vrindavan, he did many miracles, even in Battle of Kurukshetra. But still not that every time he was doing miracle only. I mean, if somebody can ask, why didn't Krishna allow the fight between Pandavas and Kauravas in such a way that nobody in Pandavas' army died and everybody in Kauravas' army died? I mean, Krishna could have done that, but that would seem very boring actually. Nobody would take that very seriously, right? That is why I gave the example of a cricketer. If he's hitting every ball 6, then the game becomes extremely boring because people will think, ये क्या है? आदमी ने पूरा game खराब कर दिया. हर एक ball पे 6 मार रहा है. मजा ही नहीं है अभी. So if Krishna would have done miracle after miracle in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, then that battle only becomes very boring to read. So that is why I said that as avatar psychology, he behaves like human being only most of the time. And part of his human behavior is to protect. In that context, I said. Okay?
Okay, Prabhuji. Yeah.
Yeah.
Other question I had is that when you are talking about Dvandva and analysis, basically Dvandva means here you are using it for basically taking action of giving punishment.
Yeah, Dvandva means duality, right? So if I love a person, how can I punish him? So there becomes a Dvandva, na? I love Bhishma, but I punish Bhishma. So Dvandva ho gaya na udhar. I love Wali, but I punish Wali. So Dvandva ho gaya na? That means you love a person, but you beat him also. So there is a duality in it, right? Like that.
And analysis, you are saying it as action which is taken after.
That means a reconciliation. A reconciliation happens, right, later. That means Krishna punishes Bhishma by getting him shot on a bed of arrows, but later he reconciles, right? He glorifies his position. He takes the Pandavas to him. He gives him straight away sends him back to Godhead. So whatever. So that part is done. Like Wali, Ram kills Wali, but then in analysis he makes it very clear to Wali, right? Why he killed him, and he gives a big lecture to him. What he did was wrong. Why he had to be killed, and Wali accepted it. Many people have a problem why Ram killed Wali, but Wali didn't have a problem. If you see Valmiki Ramayana, Wali is very happy actually. In fact, he's very sad. He's sad that he did a mistake, and Ram convinces him why what he did was wrong and why he had to get the punishment. But now Ram sends him to the higher destination. So basically that reconciliation is very important. Are you understanding? Reconciliation means किसी के साथ प्रॉब्लम है, पनिश किया, लेकिन परमानेंटली उसके साथ कट ऑफ नहीं किया आपने रिकनसाइल किया, उसको वापस एक सिचुएशन में डाल दिया जहां पर वो फ्लरिश होगा, या यू गिव हिम अ हायर डेस्टिनेशन और समथिंग लाइक दैट. आर यू गेटिंग इट? And that happens because of that analysis. So, and that is beautiful everywhere. So just like the two examples we took, where if you see Wali especially, even after he was killed, Ram gives him a very long talk actually, why he was wrong in what he did. And Wali accepts it. Wali understands everything. And then Wali begs forgiveness from Ram, from Sugriv, and the whole thing is reconciled properly. That reconciliation I spoke of as the post analysis where things are sorted out, because that is also very important. Na? So that is why I was giving the example practically also, that if somebody does a mistake or something, directly thrashing him publicly and throwing him out permanently becomes a challenge, because then he doesn't come back. There is no reconciliation only. मतलब उसके साथ permanently हम तोड़ देते हैं. So in that point I said, is that okay?
Yes, Prabhuji. Now, actually, in some of the previous lectures, you have also mentioned that we should not judge the intention but the action.
Yeah.
So, in connection to this, like we were giving example of relationship of that homosexual male.
Yeah.
So, means when the temple took this kind of call, so is it connected to with, means I am not able to understand what is this judgment of intention and judging the action and not the intention in this case.
Yeah. So see, basically the action is wrong because that person, if he knew he's a homosexual, he shouldn't get married only, right? I mean, why marry a woman and spoil her life? So you could have before, you knew your problem from before. So why did you do that mistake? Correct. But at the same time, that fellow's intention, when later we talk to him, you understand that no, in devotee society, you don't get accepted very easily if you say you are like this. You know, in the Indian society in general, you are accepted only if you are a properly married fellow and all that. So he says that is the reason I married. It was not that outrightly I wanted to cheat. I thought that I will gain acceptance and so on. So then they understand that, okay, ultimately there is some level of sincerity as a devotee also. I know him personally very well, this person whom I'm talking about. He's my good friend. So now he's very well situated actually. They made him understand also that, okay, so you did wrong, so some punishment for it. But again, I mean, the beauty was he was punished in such a way that nobody knew only about his problem. Even right now, I'm telling you, in Chowpatty, very few people know who the fellow is. I know him because he was my batchmate. I mean, in Bombay, but most people don't know only this person. So, but at the same time, a very senior fellow, and now he's contributing very nicely. He comes to temple, yatra, everything, and he's just like a normal devotee in the crowd, right? So basically, the action of marrying was wrong, but the intention wasn't that terrible also. And basically, everybody has that good intention at the end of the day. So basically, in some way. So that is reconciled and that position is given. So that person is never thrown out completely like that. That is what I was saying.
Okay, Prabhu. Yeah, clear. Thank you.
Haribol. Gaurav Prabhu, you have a question?
Prabhuji,
Yeah, please, good.
One question for this Brahman, we heard about this in the last 1 hour, but then what actually is Brahman? Is it a concept or is it a quality? So what is actually Brahman?
Acha, Brahman. Okay. Sorry, I was hearing Brahman. Yeah. Yeah, Brahman. See, Brahman basically. See, the Brahman. What is the Brahman understanding? Brahman basically it can be defined in several ways. One is it is the unmanifest energy of the Lord, which is present everywhere in everything. Okay. Simple thing, if you want to understand Brahman, you read 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita or 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. When Krishna is saying that he is there everywhere, that means if you see the lion, in that lion, there is a heroism, right? I'm sure all of us, when we go to the zoo with our children, the most attractive animal is the lion or sometimes the tiger, whatever. I mean, they're very magnificent, right? When you look at them, you're simply attracted. Are you getting my point? So that lion basically, it represents Krishna. Krishna is saying that I'm there in that. Are you getting it? So that means as Brahman, as that energy, he pervades everything in the universe. Every object, every characteristic is like that because of him. So for example, in 10th chapter Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna says about the 7 qualities of a woman, like fine speech and this and that, intelligence, the qualities of a woman that he talks about, Krishna says, I am that. Which basically means if you see any woman, your wife or any lady, when she exhibits certain of those qualities, you understand that it is Krishna's energy over there. It is because Krishna has put that in that system that person is manifesting those characteristics. So if you see the 10th and 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita and the Purusha Sukta prayers, etc., we get an understanding how Krishna permeates every aspect of the universe, every characteristic, and so on. Right? So now, so that is the general impersonal, existence of God. And of course, there is that Brahman, which is the Brahma Jyoti also. Brahma Jyoti means the effulgence of God, right? So that is, of course, a part of that Brahma Jyoti is the sun. And, so the sunlight also is said to be expansion of that Brahma Jyoti only, which basically lights up everything in the world. So all this is there. Now, what is a Brahman understanding? Brahman understanding means, see, Aham Brahmasmi means what? That the soul is also part of God, correct? The soul is eternally part and parcel of God, right? According to Sanatana Dharma, we are not created. Even God doesn't create the Atma. The Atma is as eternal as Krishna. Atma is always existing, like Krishna is existing. So there is a oneness. That oneness is because, so that oneness is what Krishna is speaking of in 5th chapter, 6th chapter Bhagavad Gita, where he talks about, the Atma. When you see the Brahman, Gavi, Hastini, you see gold, pebble, you see everything with the equanimity. That means, why equanimity? Because everything is Brahman only, right? Everything is Brahman. That means the gold is Brahman, the stone is Brahman, right? The body of the Brahman, the body of the Chandal, the body of the dog. So there is, at one level, there is a Abheda, where you don't distinguish too much. So if somebody can see like that, then he is called as Brahmasthita, according to Bhagavad Gita, 5th chapter, 6th chapter, if you carefully see. Krishna appreciates that kind of a non-dualistic vision. Non-dualistic vision. Now, if you carefully see, Prabhuji, in the Indian culture in general, this was encouraged. Like in villages and all, if you see, your child and your neighbor's child, people don't distinguish so much, in a sense that sometimes, there is some food at home, somebody comes, they eat. So so then that comes in behavior, where when Atithi comes home, he's treated like God. Whatever is there in the house, you give it to him, right? So basically, you see that Brahman only in every person, every object, and you treat everyone non-differently the way you treat yourself. Like Chanakya says, that verse, Atmavat Sarva Bhuteshu. That means treating and looking at everyone just the way you look at yourself. So this is considered the Brahman platform of action in the world. The Brahman platform of action. And that is why I was giving examples of how, when we are not in the Brahman platform of action, we see too much distinction and enmity with people. So, on the Brahman platform of action, you are not even supposed to see an enmity with a fellow from Pakistan, let us say, who may be a Dushman country for us. But that is far-fetched. If you notice the examples I gave, many times we have problems with our fellow devotees only, or the people who are staying around, or with preachers. One preacher and another preacher has problem, right? So sometimes management or things are done in such a way that there is too much Bheda or difference given importance. But the Abheda is not treated. So I hope you understood the point. Any question further? Haribol? Gaurav Prabhu, you can hear me? Okay, I think, I don't know, I'm audible or what. Yes, Saragray Prabhu, I'm not audible, what?
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Maybe Gaurav left. Okay, any other question anybody has? I think...
Yeah, I'm there. Thank you for that. I think you broke us sometime in the previous.
Okay. Yeah, it's okay?
Yeah, thank you, Guruji.
Yeah. Nitin Sharma, you have a question. Go ahead.
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी, ये जो गौरव प्रभु ने क्वेश्चन पूछा उसी के कंटिन्यूएशन में, तो हमारे लिए जो ब्राह्मण रियलाइजेशन प्रैक्टिकल लेवल पे जो आपने बताया कि टू कृष्णा इन अवर जॉब और टू सी कृष्णा इन द फैमिली एंड टू कृष्णा इन अवर एनवायरनमेंट, तो इट इज मोर प्रैक्टिकल, मतलब हाउ टू एट अवर लेवल ब्राह्मण रियलाइजेशन में रहने के लिए कि सभी में भगवान देखने का है.
Okay. Understood. So इसीलिए ना, at our level to see Brahman realization, that is why. हरि बोल.
Yes, हरि बोल.
या आप आपका पॉज कर दो, आपके आवाज में काफी सारा नॉइज आ रहा है बैकग्राउंड. I'll tell. Yeah, that is why if you see grihastha duties, if you see na, Grihastha duties are like that only. Like if you see standard Grihastha duties in Bhagavatam 7th canto, it says very clearly that a Grihastha must feed animals, it must feed guests. मतलब ये जो concept है ना कि पक्षी को खाना रखो, कुत्ते बिल्ली, poor people, सबको खाना खिलाओ. This is all given in the Shastra. Even in Bhagavatam talks about it. If you read 7th canto, chapter 15, ideal household life, it talks about all these concepts. These concepts are there in the Shastra to give us an understanding that we shouldn't do too much bedbhav between various creatures. So whether it is plants, animals, birds, environment, keeping the environment clean. If you see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he tells Sarvam Bhattacharya and Vidya Vachaspati in Chaitanya Bhagavat. Both are brothers. Mahaprabhu is telling Sarvam Bhattacharya, आप दारू ब्रह्म का सेवा करो, और विद्या वाचस्पति को बोलते हैं कि आप जल ब्रह्म का सेवा करो. So जल ब्रह्म is Ganga and दारू ब्रह्म is Jagannath. So even worshipping the river Ganga. Now please note, Ganga is of course a holy river, but for that matter, any river if you see, or anything in the environment, to deal with it very carefully, all that is a practical way in which you interact with the environment. See, when you say Brahman understanding at practical level, 2-3 things are there. One is how we deal with environment. Second thing is how we deal with plants, animals, birds, that kind of a thing. Third thing, how we deal with human beings, our neighbors and people like that, how we deal with them. And then fourth thing is how we deal with fellow devotees, right? I mean, that is part of human being only. And then how you deal with sukha dukkha in your life. That is also indicative of Brahman realization, right? That means happiness, distress keeps coming. अभी कोरोना के कारण बहुत लोगों को पैसा कम मिलेगा. हमारे बॉस ने तो हमको बोला था कि 50% ही सैलरी मिलने वाला है कुछ महीने. So, all of us, we have our own set of problems in this world. Sukha dukkha keep coming and going. So, all of these to kind of remain equanimous. That means to not get too disturbed or to not overly become happy. All that is practical way in which you maintain that equanimity in life. आप समझ गए ना? Like that.
यस प्रभु जी, ऐसे जो घरों में कहा जाता था, पहली रोटी गाय को, आखिरी रोटी कुत्ते को, something like that.
Yeah, that is there actually. One is supposed to feed animals. That is considered a very important part of Vedic tradition. The Bhagavatam also talks about it, and feeding guests. Now that is all one thing, but Brahman understanding in many things are there. Even reading Shastra, the technical understanding which is there in 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, that itself helps one with Brahman understanding. And even Karma Yoga, that means seeing Krishna in your job, Krishna in your family life, all that is also.
And like Krishna is the taste of water, it will also come.
Beg your pardon?
Krishna is the taste of water, so think all this.
Yeah, वो पूरा 10th chapter Bhagavad Gita. That means बरगद का पेड़ है, the banyan
people का पेड़ है.
Yeah, people का पेड़. Everything is part of this only. If you generally see ना प्रभु जी, जो average Hindu है ना, Hindu बोलते हैं हम लोग, whatever they practice properly, हाँ, जो normal Hindu है, अगर वो बराबर Hinduism practice कर रहा है, वो ब्राह्मण level पे ही उसको लाके रखता है उसको. That is how it is. मतलब general. So I was just saying that for devotees also we need to, otherwise what happens, not too much Bheda becomes. I'll just give one last example to understand this concept better, not to criticize, but understand concept better. So just like in Maharashtra, we have, recently apna ISKCON isme, there was one meeting or something where, they had to distribute Maharashtra in 8 zones. Zone banana tha unko, prachar karne ke liye. So you may be knowing that Radhanath Maharaj and Loknath Maharaj are the main preachers in Maharashtra. तो ऐसा था कि भाई उनके डिसाइपल्स में डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करना है ये 8 जोन को. तो जनरली मोस्ट पीपल दे लीडर्स दे फेल्ट दैट नहीं, राधानाथ महाराज के डिसाइपल्स में देयर वर मोर लीडर्स. तो ऐसा सजेस्ट किया कि राधानाथ महाराज के लीडर्स में 6 लोग और लोकनाथ महाराज के 2 लोग, तो 2 जोन उधर और 6 इधर. तो ऐसा था, लेकिन फिर वो लोग बोले नहीं ऐसा नहीं चलेगा, 4-4 होना चाहिए. So basically the whole goal was not more about about who can do the preaching nicely or whatever. It was about like, वही मैं बोल रहा, बच्चे जैसे क्रिकेट विकेट खेलते हैं, कैसे बोलते हैं ना, मेरा इलाका है, ये बॉल मेरी जगह पे आया, so that kind of a thing. So when I hear such things, I feel very strongly that कभी क्या होता है कि हम कृष्णा कृष्णा बात कर रहे हैं, भगवान एस्पेक्ट पे बात कर रहे हैं, लेकिन जो एक बहुत ग्राउंड लेवल कॉन्शियसनेस है, where you don't see a difference between yourself and another person. Now we are talking about preachers. आप समझ गए ना? अभी
Yes, yes.
राधेश्याम प्रभु जैसे व्यक्ति है जो बहुत प्रचार कर सकते हैं, तो उनको और कोई और व्यक्ति को एक ही लेवल का ट्रीटमेंट देना बराबर नहीं होता है ना, फ्रॉम अ इवन मैनेजरियल पर्सपेक्टिव, व्हाट टू स्पीक ऑफ ब्राह्मण पर्सपेक्टिव. सो टू बी एबल टू सी, टू बी एबल टू डेवलप दैट नॉन एनवियस नेचर कि नहीं बाबा ये आदमी मेरे से श्रेष्ठ है और इसने प्रीचिंग किया या मैंने प्रीचिंग किया, क्या फर्क पड़ा, अल्टीमेटली इसके पास टैलेंट ज्यादा है तो करने दो ना, उसको ज्यादा प्रचार होगा, भगवान का ही ज्यादा प्रचार होने वाला है ना. But for that you need this basic Brahman understanding also. You need this understanding of seeing everybody equally. बहुत ज्यादा भेदभाव देखा ना, मेरा गुरु, मेरा disciple, तेरा disciple, that kind of a thing, then it becomes little more on the Veda side. You understood? I gave this example just from that perspective. समझ गए ना?
Yes, Prabhuji.
हाँ, तो basically हमारा मैनेजमेंट में, हमारा खाने पीने में, हर एक चीज में ब्राह्मण अंडरस्टैंडिंग आता है.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Prabhuji, one more point. Is there Avatar and Bhagwan? Is there any difference between Krishna at Earth or Krishna in the Golok Vrindavan? Is there a little difference?
अरे है ना, Krishna is the same Krishna only, but in Golok Krishna is not limited na. Krishna is unlimited in Golok. For example, see, even in Vrindavan, even when Krishna comes to this world in Vrindavan, Krishna is expanding like anything, right? With every gopi he is dancing. With every cowherd boy is relating. But in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Krishna is like Avatar only sitting there. Krishna is not saving Abhimanyu, right? समझ गए बात?
Yes.
मतलब एक बार भगवान कृष्ण वृंदावन छोड़ देते हैं तो फिर वो नॉर्मल ह्यूमन बीइंग जैसे मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम बिहेव करते हैं ना, यहाँ जाते हैं, राजकरण करते, ये करते, वो करते. मतलब जो भगवान की लीला अगर आप देखोगे वो वृंदावन में ही है पहले 11 साल और गोलोक वृंदावन में है.
तो
यहाँ आने के बाद भी भगवान कर सकते हैं. जैसे मैंने बोला, अगर कुरुक्षेत्र में भगवान ने सभी कौरवों को मार दिया और एक भी पांडव के आर्मी में एक आदमी भी नहीं मरा, ऐसा कर सकते क्या भगवान? कर सकते हैं, लेकिन करेंगे तो क्या होगा, लोगों को कुछ मजा ही नहीं आएगा. लोग बोलेंगे क्या चल रहा है, तो बहुत ही बोरिंग ड्रामा है. समझ गए ना? जैसे कोई बैट्समैन आया और हर बॉल पे छक्का मारा, वैसे हुआ ना, फिर तो बहुत गेम ही बोरिंग हो जाएगा. So Krishna, to flavor the pastimes, he will behave like a human being. So devotees understand that, लेकिन नॉन डिवोटी को समझता नहीं है, तो वो कंफ्यूज हो जाता है और उसको लगता है कि ऐसा भगवान क्यों कर रहे हैं.
तो कृष्णा की अंतिम लीला में जब उनको तीर लगा था तो जो रक्त निकला था, तो that part only that he is behaving as a human being.
Yeah, he's behaving as a human being only. He's behaving as a human being only. He's behaving as a human being in that. In fact, some of the shastras say that
सच्चिदानंद है तो blood should not come out, something like that.
नहीं, ऐसा कुछ नहीं. कृष्णा ब्लड आती है, और एक पास शास्त्र में तो ये भी बताया कि कृष्णा गिव्स अप अ बॉडी. मतलब हम भागवत में सुनते हैं ना, भगवान चले गए अपने धाम.
Yes.
एक शास्त्र में ये भी लिखा है कि भगवान ने एक शरीर भी छोड़ दिया दुनिया में. आप समझ गए ना? मतलब जैसा एक अंत्य संस्कार के लिए एक शरीर, एक शरीर भी छोड़ दिया जिसका अंत्य संस्कार किया किसी ने. मतलब एकदम ही ह्यूमन बीइंग जैसे भगवान डिपार्ट भी करते हैं. आप समझ गए ना? मतलब ऐसे नहीं कि तो ये भी है कि भगवान चले गए डायरेक्ट, लेकिन ये भी है कि एक माया शरीर भी छोड़ दिया इधर जिसका अंत्य संस्कार होगा और लोगों को लगे कि भाई ये नॉर्मल आदमी गया ऐसा. तो भगवान बिहेव्स लाइक अ ह्यूमन बीइंग. ही डज दैट, एंड दैट इज अप्रिशिएटेड बाय द डिवोटीज. नॉट दैट ही हैज बिकम अ ह्यूमन बीइंग, बट उसमें एक रस है. समझ गए ना?
ओके प्रभु जी, थैंक यू.
हरि बोल. या दामोदर अष्टकम प्रभु, गो अहेड.
प्रभु जी, दिस ज्ञान योगा में हम लोग बोलते हैं ना कि नेति प्रोसेस है, दैट इज ऑथराइज्ड वन, लाइक वी से ना कि ये एब्सोल्यूट ट्रूथ नहीं है. तो व्हाट, वेयर डज दैट कम देन? लाइक इफ यू आर टॉकिंग दैट इन एवरीथिंग वी शुड सी द एब्सोल्यूट ट्रूथ, so that process we hear na, neti means this is not, and then they reach, that is a very tedious process we hear that.
The process of not this, right? Actually I don't see that in the Bhagavad Gita. ये Bhagavad Gita में नहीं है. I think this is more some Upanishad talks in this way, where this is not the absolute, this is not the absolute. So trying to come to that particular understanding of what is the absolute truth. But the Bhagavad Gita, the way
Is it there in the Bhagavatam? I think
I don't know. I don't remember the reference. I'll have to find out Damodar Prabhu on this.
No, but still
नेति नेति
that
process.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, context क्या है उसका? Okay.
Yeah, उसको context क्या है मुझे भी देखना पड़ेगा. I have read it in Prabhupada purports. वो हमने पढ़ा है, मालूम है मेरे को आप क्या बोल रहे हो. लेकिन ये नेति नेति कौन से शास्त्र के टेक्स्ट में आ रहा है वो मेरे को याद नहीं है. ढूंढना पड़ेगा थोड़ा.
Okay, Prabhu. So okay. So second one is like this. You talked about Brahman acting on a Brahman means a platform as far as possible in our community scenario, but in joint families or bigger families where there is always an issue with the properties. You understand? I means eventually it comes up only. So in those cases also eventually it happens that people stop talking and grudge remains lifelong.
No, one second. Sorry, I lost you. I couldn't hear anything. Can you repeat?
Yeah. Apruji, in families also, like when we are living in a joint family, like we have 2-3 uncles and there is a joint ancestral property. So eventually some kind of issues come up. Means that is, I think, generalized everywhere we can see.
Yeah,
some kind of things are also there. So in those cases, also this happens that the individual families which are there or part of the joint family, they stop talking and they maintain grudges lifelong. Means they are not able to solve it. So that is also a part like the means people are not understood, or that is means it's okay if something is happening like that, or we should try to means after this understanding, should we also try to reconcile and. हेलो हरिबोल 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 क्या हो गया?
Damodar's Prabhu. Just wait.
यस प्रभु जी. हाँ ओके